I remember being mayor of Wanganui when a little girl, we were talking about Ruthless Empire this morning, Baby Roo, but when a little girl called Gia Tautua was murdered by the mongrel mob in a drive-by shooting after they were trying to target her Black Power father. So there are innocent people who die. This isn't just some sort of dispute that occurs between people who probably deserve some sort of send-off. This often involves intergenerational ingrained hatred. And somebody who's actually thought and widely involved in seeking a solution in this matter, I believe he also works in prisons with gang members, trying to get them to turn around their lives, is rehabilitation expert Billy Macfarlane Sr. He heads or founded the Rotorua-based rehabilitation program, Puwhakamua. I think I've got that right. Billy will tell me. And he has talked about the need for the intergenerational ingrained hatred between Black Power and mongrel mob to be addressed. And he joins us now. Billy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Mike.
Mate, just tell us a little bit about yourself first. You, yesterday, we had technical difficulties yesterday, as you know, but we were to have this interview yesterday. But you headed off to the prison yesterday to do, counselling work in the prisons as well you do through your program?
No, I still run the facility in Rotorua. I'm working with now a reintegration facility, so we reintegrate men that have been paroled.
Oh, right.
And every Friday I work in Kuhuora prison, the Woody prison in South Auckland. In two spaces I work with a group of men that have been identified to come out into reintegration. And I also work with a group of men that are in a segregation unit delivering kaupapa Māori wānanga. So people think that when we go into the prisons we teach people Māori stuff, that we go in and teach them haka and waiata and maurako and all that sort of stuff. But we do a little bit of that, but the foundation of what we do is actually cognitive intervention Māori style. So we address tikanga Māori, which is related directly to the men's behaviour. So our focus is to get in there and address their behaviour so that when they go home better people than they came in, and they don't reoffend, so that we don't see them coming back in the prison. So that's what I do on a Friday. In the last few days I've been in the prison, helping to rebuild the Māori kaupapa unit, because it's been getting a bit messy without any outside help.
So I have a perspective, and I suspect my perspective is relatively common, that Māori folk who join, say, the mongrel mob and Black Power and go to prison, come out of prison again and then return to the gang and continue with their lifestyle. I assume that the aim of your program is to break that cycle, is it?
Yep, it's one of the aims of what we do. We don't actually in our reintegration facility, Mike. We don't take active gang members. We don't work with them.
Right.
So one of those reasons is because we expect them to make a decision to step away from the gang before we can give them all of the amazing stuff that they need to stay safe, because often their connection to the gangs is responsible for their offending. Not all the time though. So in the prison I do work with active gang members, but we try to persuade many of them to step away.
Yeah.
But I mean, the prison environment is a breeding ground for gangs. And some people don't really understand what that looks like. I mean, you imagine a young boy that's been put in prison for driving without a license. He goes into a unit that's 80%, 90% even, some of them influenced by gangs. He gets put in a cell with a high-ranking gang member, and he comes out the next morning with a gang tattoo on his face. And he gets told to do the gang stuff and made to do the gang stuff while he's in prison. He goes home and he's a totally different person, because he now has made friends with them, and he brings that stuff into his world. There's nothing in our prisons at the moment to stop that. No prisons are providing a safe place for men to step back from gangs. They're not providing any safety for them. They're just put where they're told. They're often, if they come from up north, they're put down South Island. If they're from Auckland, they're put over into Hawke's Bay. Staff are not trained. The correctional staff are not trained to deal with these matters. There's a lot of violence in our prisons. It's not often spoken about. And right now, I hear our politicians talking about throwing people in prison. Right now, prison's the worst place to be putting people unless they really need to be there.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, and I have some sympathy towards it. But we're looking at, you've suggested a gang summit similar to the National Justice Summit that was held, I think, 4 or 5 years ago to get ideas flowing. You want politicians, leaders, police, courts, correction staff, gang leaders to come up with ways to exit members from gangs. Well, gang leaders really want to exit members from gangs, don't they, in actual fact, want to recruit more, Billy?
I think it's different around the country, Mike. Like, in my interactions with many gangs, some gang leaders do want that. Some gang leaders do want their members to not take drugs. Some gang members want their members to be pro-social. Unfortunately, because of the institution of gangs, there's not a lot of control even by a lot of the leaders around working with the young members. The young members join for different reasons than the older members did. So it's like a really holistic approach needs to be taken to deal with the problem. Why I talked about a gang summit is because, like, I've got my ideas, but my ideas don't work for everybody. I think we've got to collect a whole lot of ideas, and then we've just got to try to do something.
No, listen, I agree with you, and I think particularly around your comments on prisons are right. They are starting to become run by gangs themselves, and you're right, easy place to recruit non-gang members. In fact, I think, who addressed that issue? I think David Seymour. Oh, no, Winston Peters was suggesting, both of them, I think, that we should have prisons simply for gang members so that non-gang members can be in a much safer environment. Do you think that's something along dealing on a short-term basis?
No. I'd like to know who's going to police those gang prisons, because
probably
we
the
don't
army.
have the staff to do that. They'll take it out on the army too, though. And we've got to be real here, Mike. Like you can't. People are going to die and people are going to get injured in those places. You can't.
Well, they already are.
You can't turn around and bring the army in and say, let's just shoot them all. Because we know in some countries they would have. I
was just going to say it's sort of a slightly attractive proposition to me, but yeah, I know what you mean. I know.
Unfortunately, Mike, for me, I'm a people's person. I like to say as bad as people are. And I mean, Winston Peters, David Seymour, they haven't sat in cells with some of our worst people, incarcerated people, and had conversations with them and found out what actually took them there. And I have this conversation with people about a beautiful little baby. When the beautiful little baby is born, we're all beautiful little babies when we're born. Unfortunately, some of us are exposed to some of the world's nastiest problems. And these beautiful little babies, some of them grow up in gang homes, some of them grow up in poverty, some of them grow up in sexual abuse, violence, and then they move on to become what we know as criminals. And then only then does people take notice of them, and what they say is lock them up forever. We deal in our space, we deal lots with trauma. We deal with the reasons it takes people to prison, and a lot of these really bad monsters that sit in our prison cells now, they were beautiful children once, and something's gone wrong, and a lot of it's out of their control.
Well, probably their whānau went wrong. They're born into the wrong whānau to a large extent, Billy.
Sometimes in the wrong town too. Sometimes around the wrong people. And Mike, as a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old child, you don't get to choose.
No, I'm aware of that.
The fruit from the top of the tree. You just get what you get, eh?
Yep.
And I look at these people that attack all of our men in prisons and our men in gangs and our men that are doing these stupid things, and it's just like some of the ugly comments that come from the public. It's like who are the real criminals here? Like we're creating a society of hatred, and we've got hatred playing itself out on our streets right now. And I worry, and I talked about this 10 years ago. I worry about where our society is going to go, because we're not addressing the problem the right way. Right. We've got to try to come back to becoming a kind and a nice society, and a breeding ground for love.